Apples, tulips, cannabis, and potatoes. These are the central figures in Michael Pollan's 2001 book, The Botany of Desire. The central idea is that plants, these living creatures that cannot move of their own volition, have nevertheless found a way to spread across the entire world. They've manufactured chemicals, the book claims, that have acted on human beings so deeply that we have gone to great lengths to increase and expand their habitats. Fruits that explode with sweetness, flowers that pop with color, herbs that alter consciousness, vegetables that satisfy hunger. These plants first came on the scene thousands of years ago in specific locations. Central Asia, South America, and so on. But thanks to human desire, our longing for sweetness and beauty and altered states and deep satisfaction, because of our desire, these plants are now grown all over the world. And looking at the fascinating histories of these four plants, it's easy it starts to seem that the animating force of all life, in fact, the most common reality that connects every living creature, is the experience of desire. It is the bee who longs for nectar that sticks its head into a blossom. It is the robin who wants a home that sticks twigs onto your windowsill. It is the woodpecker who hopes for a mate that pecks your house at 6 a.m. It is the child who needs to feel seen that sings or dances or performs cartwheels in the grocery store. Everywhere we look and wherever we may be, it is almost always some form of desire that makes life grow and turn and move. Okay, you might be thinking, well, what's any of that have to do with church or with God or with spiritual life in general? Well, in a word, everything. Desire has everything to do with what we're up to here. Thomas Aquinas was a medieval scholar and theologian. He is considered one of the foundational figures of Christian doctrine. He set out to take the insights of ancient pre-Christian Greek philosophy and integrate it into Christian thinking, ultimately seeking to find a rational basis for Christianity. One of his pivotal ideas borrows from Aristotle's theory about movement. For Aristotle, nothing can move without being acted on by something else. The modern day example most often used to describe this concept focuses on a pool ball. The 8 ball, for instance, cannot move unless another ball hits it. The ball that hits the 8 ball cannot move unless something else moves it. The pool stick itself cannot move unless someone moves it. So, if you believe that something cannot move unless something else acts on it, then the question arose for Thomas Aquinas, where does God fit in? Does God move? And if so, then how? What can move God? Where Aquinas ultimately lands is that nothing can move God, because there is nothing that exists outside of God. And because nothing can move God, we are left with this new question. If God does not move, then how does God move us, the universe, anything at all? And the answer that Thomas Aquinas lands on is love. God, the so-called unmoved mover, brings us to her by being loved, by being desired, like an apple blossom that attracts a bee, like a tulip you buy in the grocery store, like an herb with which you spice up your life, like a vegetable you grow year after year. Now, regardless of your own sense of whether or not God moves, isn't it interesting that for Aquinas, one of Christianity's most influential doctrine makers, the God-centered universe spins and moves, all thanks to desire. This wasn't just a medieval notion, though. If we look in the Bible itself, desire is all over the place. Sure, yes, there's the sensational and problematic desires of King David, who longs for somebody else's wife. There's Lot, who in a fit of drunkenness desires his daughters. There's Abraham, who desires the death of his son Isaac. And of course, there's the whole big story of a group of people who desire to make home in a so-called promised land that is, in fact, already home to a whole bunch of people. Certainly, desire can be a problem of biblical proportions. But too, wasn't it desire that led a group of magi to seek out a barn-born baby? Wasn't it longing for a better world, a different kind of life that led this baby to become a prophet and a teacher? Was it not desire that made Philip and Matthew and Levi and so on to join that prophet and envision a whole new way of being? It is desire for God, for liberation, for transformation that led people to follow Jesus and keeps leading people to follow Jesus. It was desire that enabled the first Christians to endure fire and lions and torture when an empire sought to stamp out their movement. It was desire that led Teresa of Avila and Francis of Assisi and so many other mystics into oneness with God. It was desire that led Dr. King and Cesar Chavez and Mother Teresa and so many other Christians into lives dedicated to change. This tradition called Christianity is ripe with ancient stories and lived examples of desire's force. And so we might ask ourselves, how then did this religion become all about belief? If desire has long been and still is so much of what animates spiritual life, then what's with all the talk about belief? For many people these days, belief feels flat and bland. It can feel oppressive and conniving. Belief can feel, well, just plain old boring. As a result, religion can feel all those same ways too, bland, oppressive, and plain old boring. And believe me, I get it. When religious institutions encourage people to believe in the impossible or the immoral, that God built the world in 7 days, that queer people are corrupt, that heaven is reserved for only certain folks, that genocide in Gaza is part of some divine plan, when that's what religious beliefs look like, dismissing and disclaiming belief feels like the right thing to do. But we're still left with that earlier question. How did we get to belief? Why is believing a thing that so many people have done and still do for so much of human history? I think the answer is in part fear. When we fear that our desire isn't strong enough or clear enough to get us to where we want to go, when we fear that we may not be able to reach whatever it is that we long for, belief can in fact be a tool to help us cope with that fear. You see, sometimes desire is enough all on its own. There are times when we want something so badly, we don't even slow down long enough to feel fear. We set our minds on a goal and relentlessly pursue it, so full of our own desire, we don't even question our ability. We're like an insect that makes a beeline for nectar. A butterfly does not fear that it might not reach the flower. It does not need a pep talk or a confidence boost to float through the air. It just goes boldly, brightly, and right out in the open. It's like the inspired artist who makes without stopping. It's like the lovesick 20-year-old who writes poetry to her girlfriend. It's like the activist so hungry for justice that he keeps shouting through the tear gas. It's like the food insecure person who comes by our community fridge and takes everything inside it. Desire can clarify and narrow focus, pushing us to act without thinking, for better or for worse. But then, other times, we actually start thinking. We start ruminating and wondering. We start worrying. We start doubting. We start listening to the naysayers, those chattering around us and those in our own heads. And we get scared. At times, we know what we desire, but we're not sure we can get it. We desire that job, but we're afraid somebody else is more qualified for it. We desire a deeper relationship with God, with our partner, with a friend, but we're afraid we'll be rejected. At other times, though, we run out of desire, right in the middle of doing something. We're in a marriage, and over time, frustrations and fears start to displace desire. We're in the middle of a project or our own lives, and we find that distractions and doubts start to suffocate desire. That's why I would suggest to you, friends, that there is belief. At its best, belief comes in and supplements our efforts whenever desire on its own is not enough. We believe in ourselves when we're afraid we can't do it. We believe in God when we're afraid we can't make it. We believe in each other when we're afraid we're alone. We believe in our commitments when desire dries up. This is what we see happening in today's scripture reading. Psalm 42, and you can read along in your bulletins if you like, goes like this. As a deer longs for flowing streams, so my soul longs for, desires you, O God. My soul thirsts for God, for the living God. When shall I come and behold the face of God? My tears have been my food day and night, while people say to me continually, "Where is your God?" These things I remember as I pour out my soul. How I went with the throng and led them in procession to the house of God with glad shouts and songs of thanksgiving, a multitude keeping festival. Why are you cast down, O my soul? And why are you disquieted within me? Hope in God, for I shall again praise the Holy One, my help and my God. But my soul is cast down within me. Therefore I remember you from the land of Jordan and of Hermon and Mount Mizar. Deep calls to deep at the thunder of your torrents. All your waves and your billows have gone over me. By day the Lord commands that steadfast love. And at night God's song is with me, a prayer to the God of my life. I say to God, my rock, why have you forgotten me? Why must I walk about mournfully because the enemy oppresses me? As with a deadly wound in my body, my adversaries taunt me, while they say to me continually, "Where is your God?" Why are you cast down, O my soul, and why are you disquieted within me? Hope in God, for I shall again praise the Holy One, my help and my God. I read this poem, this psalm, as a beautiful picture into the oh-so-human ebb and flow between clarity and confusion, between confidence and desperation, between desire and fear. As the deer longs, so my soul desires on the one hand, but then on the other, my tears have been my food, and my enemies taunt me. There is deep calls to deep on the one hand, but then on the other, the poet asks God, "Why have you forgotten me?" This is the movement between desire and fear, and what comes in to help close the gap is a statement and a restatement of belief. By day the Lord commands steadfast love, and by night God's song is with me. Even though people ask, the poet tells us, "Where is your God?" the speaker reminds himself again and again to hope, to find comfort in the belief that God belongs to us and is our help. Far from being some empty duty or some moral obligation, belief is a device in this poem, an ancient human tool that helps support desire when fear pokes holes into it. In too many places, though, God, faith, spirituality are not discussed in terms of desire. In too many religious spaces, desire is looked on with suspicion. It is seen as something dangerous or corrupting. A few Sundays ago, we considered together how some Christians see desire as something that needs to be channeled and honed at best, or at worst, they see desire as something that needs to be tamped down or stomped out. And so, belief gets bolstered up as the most important feature of religious life. And the whole long tradition of spiritual desire gets left out. Psalm 42, along with so much of the Bible, gets neglected or glossed over. And so, if we accept that desire is the animating force of all life, then belief without desire is dead. In fact, as too many of us know all too well, belief without wholesome desire can be deadly. You see, when we have belief without desire, then religion becomes a list of abstract rules that people defend for the sake of tradition or control, not because those rules enhance life. Meanwhile, on the other end of the spectrum, when we have desire without belief, then all we're left with is a feeling that, like any feeling, can change. Desire, then, without belief is so often flimsy and unsustainable because we carry the beautiful burden of consciousness, which means that we carry the potential for fear. We need belief, I would argue, because we need bridges to help us get across reality when desire starts to shift or when our focus starts to fail. And so, this Sunday, I leave you, friends, with three big questions that sit at the center of our spiritual lives and maybe at the center of human life. What do you desire? What are you afraid of? And what do you need to believe in order to blossom in your own bold, beautiful way? May we each be led to answers that give life over and over and over again. Amen. We now worship God as we present our offering.